All right, so we are going to start the second Dean's panel of the day. We'll start by having our Deans introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Pettigrew.
Good morning. My name is Chenetz Pettigrew, and I'm from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine.
Good morning. I'm Gabe Garcia. I'm Dean of Admissions at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Good morning. My name is Mitch Heiseroth. I'm from Touro University College of Osteopathic Medicine here in the Bay Area.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Richard Wiseman. I'm Dean for Admissions, University of Miami Miller School of Medicine.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Margaret Calloway. I'm the Associate Dean for Recruitment and Admissions from the Uniformed Services University School of Medicine.
Welcome to UC Davis, everyone. My name is Dr. Lattimore. I'm the Dean of Student and Resident Diversity.
They can hear us.
All right, we will start with the first question. And we will direct this one to Dr. Calloway. What would you like changed about medical education? And more specifically, what would you like to see change in the applicants that you see to your medical school?
So that's a two-part question. So what would I like changed about medical school applicants? I think one of the things that we're finding as a trend in the United States now is that for medical schools, they're transitioning to a more system-based education, and as such, having a little bit more in the science background, stronger college sciences and upper division sciences as you prepare, so that as you get into medical school, you don't find yourself behind the eight ball, pretty much falling behind all of your classmates that have already taken some of the advanced sciences. Some of those advanced sciences that I'm talking about include biochemistry, molecular cell biology, genetics, and having some more of those hardcore sciences will actually better prepare you for your future as a medical student and your success as a student. And what was the second part?
Second question, so the first one was, what would you like changed about medical education, and how would you like to see that reflected over time in a medical school application?
So I'm going to take on the medical education. What I think where medical education needs to go is outside the classroom, and more of your education needs to be in the community where you're actually working with the people that you will serve eventually. And until we do that, it's going to be really hard for me to convince myself how we're going to have culturally competent doctors in the future.
Okay, let's go on to the next question. How was medical education changed in your tenure, and how do you feel it will change in the future? Let's start with Dr. Garcia.
So, medical education has changed in three, I would say, significant ways. One of them, it's amazingly expensive today. And it will be more expensive in the future. It is relatively inefficient from the point that you actually send your money to AMCAS and the time you actually have a real job in medicine. It's about 10 years. And it's predominantly, as was said before, not a practical skill-building career, but in fact it's a career that takes place a lot of times in a classroom or a hospital setting. We could do much to help finance all of you to be health professionals in the future if we had programs that allowed you to trade some of the service that you want to do in the communities that you want to serve for tuition dollars for medical schools. And so we are trying to propose, in fact, that there be a way for you to achieve your dreams of being health professionals, by having some way of repaying it through public service, whether that's in the military as a public service or in communities in this country as a public service. That should be our goal. And I mean efficient to say that it really takes too long for you to get your degree. We are at Stanford looking at ways in which we can actually make pre-medical training more geared towards the skills, the knowledges, and particularly the attitudes that you need to become better physicians. As soon as you achieve those competencies, we should be able to bring you to the next level of your medical school training and not wait for specific coursework to be done, but actually wait for specific skills to be built and knowledge to be acquired. The other I'll leave for others to discuss.
Okay. On that note, is life experience favored over, say, my MCAT score or GPA? Just a general question to any of you.
Part of becoming a physician is really understanding what motivates you. You know, there was discussed a little bit in the previous panel about a fire in the belly, so to speak. And in order to understand your motivation and be able to bring yourself, to put yourself on the path to become a physician, you have to be just a little bit crazy. Because we're a little bit crazy. The process of becoming a physician will test you on all levels, your physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects. And so you have to have some sense of who you are in order to do that. So what happens in your life forms and defines your character in some ways. And as an admissions process, it's a very sort of foggy area in which we spend a lot of time thinking about. That's very important. On the other side of the coin, you know, MCATs and these in your GPAs show a trend of intellectual pursuit and a certain level of thought processes that put you into the ballpark to where you may become the kind of perspective person that can think like a physician, which is different. And that may be one of the skills that my companion here is talking about, is how do you think like a physician? And that is kind of again, a sort of foggy area, but they give us some indication of your aptitude towards that. And so there is a weighting of these two. And I wouldn't say one over the other. Every time we look at any one of you, we hope we look at you and not necessarily you compared to the person sitting next to you. And then as an osteopathic institution, we have other aspects of how important that is for us.
At the University of Pittsburgh, we do a senior play or fourth-year student play. At the end of that experience, the students are ready to let off steam, and that's where you get to see who these students really, really, really are. Many of them are physicians, many of them are writers, many of them can put on productions. All of these talents existed a long time before they became medical students and then graduating physicians from medical school. So the point of the comment is just to say that life experience is valuable. The AAMC, as was said, looks at and wants us all to do holistic review, and we all do holistic review, and we try to walk a fine line in terms of balancing life experience and the cognitive abilities represented by your MCATs and your grades. Obviously, those things have to be at a level that will allow you to get through medical education as it exists today. But life experience does have a great deal of value, and for those of us that read those applications in detail, as most of us all do, we can see what richness that would bring to our medical schools.
The University of Miami, we have a little bit of a different approach with life experiences, and we often ask the question of our applicants, tell us the road that you've traveled on the way to the front door of the medical school. And when you ask such an open-ended question, you learn about applicants who in the past have been wonderfully successful in sports, as authors, as musicians, as artists. And all of these are skills that are going to add tremendously to the person's ability to relate to the patients that they're ultimately going to have to take care of. So that is an extraordinarily important parameter to look at when you look at an applicant, and particularly when you look at an applicant and comparing them to the 5,000 or 6,000 other applicants that you're getting. So that grades and MCATs are important because you have to have a certain level of intelligence. But that really defines probably more than half of the applicants that we're receiving. What you then are able to do is take a look at the rest of the group, and often it's the applicants that have had the greatest life experiences that drift to the top of the list because they're going to add to the culture of the class and often go on to become wonderful physicians.
At the Uniformed Services University, we have a system as part of our admissions process where we do look at grades and MCATs initially, and if we determine if that level of MCAT or grades and the trends in which you've had as a traditional student or a non-traditional student, if there's an upward trend, we look at the overall trends as well. And if we feel that you're going to be successful and you're invited to an interview, we look at that as at that point when you come for an interview, our interviewers are blinded to grades and MCATs, and so we want to know about you, the person, at that point. We want to know what makes you want to be a physician, what makes you want to go into military medicine. You know, we're also looking at some of the leadership characteristics that you've had as a student in your undergraduate or the path that you've taken. And so once we've combined and gotten that information, then we look at the overall applicant when it comes to the committee, and it includes not just the grades and MCATs, but how you have been able to express yourself in an interview as well.
So this is not a either-or decision. This is you need both. So I am an internist. When my patients come to see me, they expect me to make good decisions for them. That requires me to be smart, and that requires to be knowledgeable. And so we have to take students who are academically ready to succeed not only in medical school, but in their chosen careers. At the same time, my patients also expect of me that I have the life experiences and the personal qualities that allow me to see them as individuals, as members of a family, of a culture, and of a community. And those are things that only come with well-reflected life experiences. So it's not either or, it's both. And you should strive for the highest academic achievement that you can achieve and the genuine life experiences that will allow you to inform your education and your career.
I'm going to say one shortfall I see amongst a lot of you is you don't portray those life experiences very well in your application. Often I've had the privilege of meeting with individuals in this room or across the country, and when they sit there and talk to me, I feel your passion. I feel what your family has been through. I feel the road that you have traveled to get to where you are. But then I tell you, well, I just read your application and I didn't feel any of that in reading it. So really honestly, we need to know why you want to be a doctor. And before you submit your AMCAS, do serious self-reflection about the different things you've done in life, about your path, and make sure it is truly reflected in your application before you send it to us. Because without you telling us, we honestly have no way of knowing.
Okay. Now going on to the next topic, post-bac programs. What % of students who take a post-bac program get accepted into your school?
Since no one else is jumping up here on this one. You know, this discussion was on this last panel a little bit about the importance of post-bac work. And I think the way it was represented is probably relatively accurate, at least from our perspective, in that, you know, why you do a post-bac, if you're trying to do it so that it polishes up and makes your application look a little shinier, versus are you still really showing the inquisitive mind and delving into a topic that you feel is important and continuing on your path and becoming more than you were before makes the difference. And I'd have to say, as far as looking at our incoming classes, you know, maybe 20 or 30% have post-bac work. Okay, the majority are still people who have just done the bachelor's level work. So, you know, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing this? If you're still very curious about, you know, delving into a certain area of study, then go for it. You know, and it'll show on why you're there, and it will show in other ways, if not on the MCAT, but maybe more about those experiences that we talked about earlier.
Stanford has a small student body, and every year about 4 or 5 of our students have gone through what I would call a formal post-bac program. Not post-bac education, but a formal post-bac program that has meant to either give you the pre-medical requirements that you didn't achieve during college, or actually what I would call be remedial for you, that is, to improve your grades and MCAT scores and allow you to actually demonstrate that you can be academically ready to go to school. We don't distinguish them from the rest of their classmates at the time of graduation. They, in fact, perform academically as well as others and are as successful in achieving good residencies and good future plans. So my sense is that I can't answer your direct question because I don't know what the large pool of post-bac students is, and I have no idea what percentage of post-bac students actually achieve medical school entrance. But in each of our schools, I would expect that a small minority, probably reflecting the number of them in the pool of applicants, are populating all of our classes.
Yeah, I would say at the University of Pittsburgh it is a number that we don't know, because the issue really is, as we look at it, if it has a significant value and impacts the decision of the admissions committee, it's something that is part of the process, and we don't distinguish them in terms of any metric that we're really actually looking at. However, the question that I always ask when students are asking whether they should do a post-bac or not is really, the question is why do you think you need to do it? And then answering that question will determine the kind of post-baccalaureate experience that you might pursue, et cetera, and what you do in addition to that, because the post-baccalaureate experience is not a magic bullet, and you need to know why you need to do it and address all of those issues simultaneous to pursuing the post-bac. But we really don't have any idea. It's certainly noted as it goes through the admissions process. It's something that we're aware of. People that have graduate experience, post-bac experience, we know how many credits they have. The issue there, I think, to note also, is that you want your post-baccalaureate grades to reflect a difference in your commitment and attitude, because you don't want to have a 3.3 undergraduate GPA and have a 3.3 post-baccalaureate GPA, because that's not going to really have an impact on a positive decision in most situations in the admissions process.
At our institution, UC Davis, I would say we actually look positively upon it. And the reason being is that, in all honesty, a lot of students who come from truly disadvantaged backgrounds, who did not have the world's best K through 12 education, when they hit their university setting, are not prepared. And so coming out the gate in undergraduate, quite often students from disadvantaged backgrounds don't have the GPAs that they will ultimately need to get into medical school. So at least looking, which is what I'm predominantly focused on, our students from disadvantaged backgrounds, I would say a significant number of you have needed to do a post-bac because it took you a little bit longer to come up to speed as an undergraduate. Having said that, we are looking for difference. Like the gentleman before me just said, doing more of the same is not going to work. We're looking for a significantly higher GPA. So if you are going to do a post-bac, you need to be honest with yourself and figure out what were your barriers to getting that GPA as an undergraduate, and we need to stop doing that. In some cases, it's working 2 and 3 jobs. In some cases, it's being an advocate for every and anybody. In some cases, it's doing 1,000,001 different volunteer things. All of those are wonderful, but they weren't what you didn't get you the marks you needed to get into medical school the first time. So I would strongly advise, if you're going to do a post-bac, that you let some of that go. You focus on school, because the post-bac GPA definitely needs to be better than your undergrad GPA, or you've wasted your time.
One of the things that we do at the University of Miami is to take a look at the progression of grades that you've had from your freshman through your senior year. And we very often will see somebody who probably wasn't mature enough when they started college end up with a very, very weak or even poor freshman year. And then they strengthen it in their sophomore year, and it gets a little bit stronger in their junior year. But what happens is that when you add all of those numbers together, the GPA doesn't come out particularly as high as you would like it, because it's encompassing all those grades from freshman and sophomore year. This is a situation where the admissions committee will often recommend to the applicant that they do a post-bac year, and that they take a curriculum that is packed full of the difficult science courses, biochemistry, genetics, immunology, and be able to come back and show that they can go through a curriculum that is packed with some of the more difficult classes and do quite well on it. And this will show that that maturity that perhaps wasn't there in the first 2 years of college has arrived, and that they are ready to go to medical school. So we'll often use it to kind of add just an additional year and one additional glance to be able to make a decision if you're ready to go or not.
And at our university, we do look at post-bac program students very favorably. We have a number of prior enlisted students that may have gone to many different schools because of moving from city to city or country to country, and they may not have been able to take all of their coursework at one university. And so even with the trends, you're not able to get a real feel of how they are academically. And if they're able to do that one-year post-bac program, or even some of the special master's programs, and really focus and do well, that's looked very favorably.
All right, so if my grades are average, but I have a stellar extracurricular activities, then what can an applicant do to make their application more competitive?
Post-bac?
Post-bac. Post-bac.
Yep.
All right, I guess we'll go on to the next question.
Well, I mean, you need to make sure that the school that you apply to believes that you are academically ready to succeed in that school. And if you haven't done so in your initial education, then you have to provide some additional evidence that that's the case. Post-bac programs are an efficient way of doing that, but there's many other ways to do that. Some people choose, if they're, for instance, if they're going to have a career in medicine that's going to be very public health oriented, you might choose to, in fact, enter public health school at that time. If you want to do something that is more administrative in medicine, you might choose to show your academic readiness as you are acquiring the skills that will also inform your career. So tailor what you do to show your academic readiness to what your ultimate goal is in your medical career.
And you might say, for those of you that are still progressing along the pathway, that as you've heard previously and probably heard several times today, that excellence in all of the aspects of your presentation is important. And so you don't want to have, if you have a GPA that isn't a reflection of what you think you can do, and you have the opportunity to improve it as you progress through the completion of your collegiate career, then that's what you really ought to be trying to achieve. My colleague at the University of Miami talked about the way that people look at the progression of your performance. So I would say that excellence across the board is extremely important, but you know, it's difficult to take a very unpowerful GPA and balance it absolutely against being the greatest extracurricular activity person in the world.
How does an admission committee feel about those who take 1 to 2 years off before applying to medical school?
At the Uniform Services University, we welcome students that have gone out and done something different for 1 to 2 years prior to applying to medical school. We have a number of non-traditional students that apply each year, and having some additional advanced experience, whether it's teaching for America, whether it's going and doing a fellowship in research, doing some additional clinical work along the way, it actually makes the student bring a little bit more to the table, and it solidifies the pathway in which they want to show the committee that they're serious about what they want to do.
So I hope you noticed what she said when she spoke there. She was talking about someone taking 2 to 3 years off, and they were using their time productively, as opposed to, I think I'll go and spend 2 to 3 years laying on the beach somewhere, okay? You know, it goes back to, you know, what sort of character you have within yourself and, you know, what drives you. If you believe that you need to experience more of what life has to offer so that you can have a better perspective on what you bring to medicine, so that you have a better idea on how you can interface with that, go for it, you know. But be sure that you can explain to yourself, most importantly, as well as to those of us who will be looking at you as an applicant, why you did that. Why was that really important for you to do? What did you think you were going to get out of it? What did you get out of it? And how does that shape you for your future? I think being very introspective and clear about those things. Maybe you're not clear when you go into it, but coming out the other end, as life tends to show you a path other than what you decided, it's good to know how that has changed you and how that will assist you in becoming a physician.
Okay, and our last question for our panel today will be, and this is a question for all of you, starting from Dr. Pettigrew. What's the biggest piece of advice that you can each offer for somebody who is planning to go into a career into medicine?
I think aside from striving for excellence in all that you do, that you should examine your life relevant to this particular decision and goal, because it's important to know why you want to do this. It is important to know the reasons and to direct your life towards that goal and towards those reasons. Socrates suggests to all of us that we live examined lives, and I think beyond any particular profession, particularly one as esteemed as the physician is, that should be your mantra, that you live an examined life focused on excellence.
I'm going to agree perfectly with my friend. We are about excellence. We're not about balance. We're not about all the other things. We are a profession in which excellence is demanded of everything that we do. And the most excellent physicians are those who are most self-aware. And as you think about what are the qualities that you bring to the profession, think about what are the knowledge and the skills and the attitudes that you bring, it's very important that you live your life in a very genuine way, and that you understand how to allow others who will be your clients in your future to also deal with you genuinely, because above all, we are about developing partnerships with individuals and communities to improve their health. And if you can't be genuine with your physician as to who you are as an individual and as a member of a group, that physician is not serving you well. So be, above all, very self-aware.
These are excellent advice that these two have just given you, and I really would encourage you to take this to heart. Really knowing who you are.
Use the microphone.
knowing why that you're here and why you would like to do this, and having that sort of part of you that's ready to go the limit, whatever that limit may be. If it's sort of one of these things where you think, yeah, I think I'd kind of like to be a physician, that doesn't work. That doesn't work at all. Because there's going to be a time where you're going to have to decide between your own personal comfort and the comfort of your patient. And you have to always decide for the comfort of your patient, especially if it's 2 in the morning, etc. Some advice that was given to me when I was trying to contemplate this was, this little gentleman, who's an old Japanese man who was a friend of mine, he used to call me Michi. He goes, Michi, you must live your life like you're in your deathbed. And I'm looking at him going, what? In the deathbed? You gotta be nuts. He goes, no. You're laying there in your deathbed, and you're thinking about all the things that you did in your life, and all the things that you didn't do, and at that moment in time, you're regretting those. He says, open your eyes, and now you know what you have to do today. Well, that just cinched it. It's like, dang, I got to give this a shot, my best shot. And amazingly enough, they just kept passing me, and one day they said, you're a doctor. Like, oh, now I'm really in trouble, okay? But that's what it's like, you know. You have to decide, and then once you decide, you just go. And you have to know yourself really well and be ready to grow and to learn, because this experience is going to change you. It is no less than a metamorphosis from a caterpillar to a butterfly, from the scientist that you're predescribed to the clinician that you'll become. So I really applaud you all for being here today, because when I went through, there was nothing like this. And this is part of understanding yourself and understanding why you want to go through this process.
Everything that's been said so far is absolutely the truth. And I think it's important that you begin to really go through a period of introspection. One of the things that I'll often ask an applicant who tells me about their passion for medicine or tells me about their enthusiasm and how they can't wait to be a clinician, I'll often ask them about some of the clinical experiences they've had, and their shadowing and their volunteering. And I'll usually ask them one thing: did you continue your clinical experiences after you submitted your application, or did it stop that day? And if they're honest about it, they'll tell you, they'll look at you and they'll say, oh my God. Because those that truly have a passion for medicine, when they're doing their clinical experiences or their shadowing, they want to stay, they want to go back, they can't wait, they don't want to leave. Nothing else is important. This is the most important thing in their life. And they continue doing it long after their AMCAS and their secondary applications are submitted. The people that aren't quite sure and perhaps aren't ready are those that are doing it because their pre-med advisor told them they have to do it. And they get all those hours in and they submit that application and it's over. Wrong answer. That's not what we're looking for. We want to see the passion that shows a long-term passion for medicine. Thank you.
So, as everyone else has said, it's exactly true. But the advice I want to give everyone is that as you go through your career, keep in mind that you are entering a field where you need to be professional. And that professionalism needs to be not when you're just in the interview process, not when you're talking to people on the phone, but it carries across all areas of the application process and with your patients in the future as well. It's one of those areas where you greet the secretary as you come in on an interview, you greet the people passing by in the halls as you're coming to each of the different schools, because that professionalism will carry across all lines in your future. And once you lose that level of professionalism, you failed your patients as well, because that's what you're there for.
And I just want to end by talking to those of you who can't think of anything else in this world that you want to do other than be a doctor. Don't allow anyone or any one experience to take that away from you. Continue down your path. Continue to strive for excellence and to do the things that you need to become a doctor. Because not only do you need to be a doctor, we in America need you as doctors. Thank you so much for coming.
So I'm worried we gave you very philosophic advice and not very practical advice. I'm going to give you some really practical advice, and I hope it's controversial to you. Don't shadow. That quieted you down. Great. So think about what you do when you shadow. You're actually allowing yourself to watch someone else do some good work and learning from that. Get yourself a skill that will be useful for the person for which you are working. Become an interpreter. Become a health educator. Become a health screener. Make yourself of use in that interaction. You should not be passive in that interaction. Make sure that you have skills that you can bring to that interaction that will allow you to see it from a practitioner's point of view, not in the shadows. So, don't shadow. Do something active.
All right, thank you to all of the deans for being here today. Your ideas and advice are an inspiration to us all. Thank you.
Thank you.